Today's episode of The Driving Kick is brought to you by Amparo Art. Selected paintings from some of the most impressive collections from emerging and established artists in the Mid-Atlantic, New England, and Dallas-Fort Worth regions are now for sale. Their unique styles come in a variety of forms: vibrant abstracts that can fill a room, still lives depicting floral and fauna, and playful geometric pieces that make an image come to life. Our family-run business is here to help you make your house into a home. Visit amparoart.com. That's AMPAROART.com to learn more. You're listening to The Driving Kick. What is going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Driving Kick. We're recording this on an uncharacteristically warm Saturday in November, where I think it is safe to say that your co-hosts are not doing so hot in the fan department. How are you doing today, Yams?
Good, Kev. I'm sick of watching the Sixers after 10 games, but I'm happy to talk some Vegas today with our guest Andrew. Andrew, thank you for being here, man.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It is the honor of a lifetime.
Good to hear.
That is great to hear, Andrew. We couldn't be more pumped after your mailbag questions and your input during these first few episodes. Always love having a dedicated listener on the pod.
I am a dedicated listener, and I will continue to be so. So, a little bit of background about myself. I have watched a lot less to almost none of real live NBA this year because the Phillies have been unexpectedly good in taking my non-Sunday TV time. But I consider myself a bit of a futures betting sharp. And by that, I mean, I very much follow box scores, narratives, and trends, and play the books against each other a bit and search for good odds on championship betting, division betting, and awards betting for various leagues, and the NBA is no exception. So you guys were nice enough to have me on to talk through what I consider to be some of the key players and teams to watch early on, and perhaps if you guys like me, I will maybe have more informed takes about the ball on the court basketball later in the year once the Phillies either win or lose the World Series.
I love it. Let's do it.
So I figured I would start more with the teams because that's what you guys have been talking about more. So I'll jump right into what I see is maybe the best value on the board right now. We're a couple weeks in. There isn't a ton of value right now in any of these markets, as I'll kind of explain. But I do think that the Bucks championship odds remain extremely underpriced. And by that I mean probably about a 20 to 25% discount. I'm looking at DraftKings right now, and they're plus 550 to win the title, which to me, favorite. First of all, just for context, the Celtics are plus 600, the Clippers and the Warriors are each plus 700, and the Suns are plus 850. No other team is less than 10-1 odds. So it's implying a pretty scattered horse race. But to me, the Bucks are a clear tier above these other teams, other than maybe the Celtics. But they should be a little bit more dispersed from the rest of the group because they're playing so well without Chris Middleton. And I think that what the Bucks are doing this year definitely seems to be playing for the postseason, trying out a lot of different lineups and a lot of different things while still winning the regular season games and theoretically should be locking in a home court advantage as well.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed about the Bucks this year, well, first off, as you said, they don't have Chris Middleton. Arguably, maybe not arguably, their second best player. They're shooting like 33% from three. They don't have Pat Connaughton. They're missing pieces, and they're still just beating teams to death. And, I got to say, I could not feel any better about my preseason MVP prediction because Giannis is just wrecking teams. 33, 13, and 6. And Yams, I just want to say that looking back at that, I don't feel like your heart was really in into it when you picked Embiid for MVP, and I want to know how you feeling about these Bucks right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I picked Embiid for MVP, it was more so, it was like half a bit. Um, Gut feeling just going into the season, first of all, I didn't expect Embiid to care this little to start the season, but even with that, I didn't think it would be the year where he would try to win the MVP. I think the Bucks look awesome. I keep thinking about how the Sixers lost to them on the Tobias Harris blown coverage that gave up a wide open Matthews three. The Sixers
There was
could have
some
been in
horrible,
the
horrible
game.
defense on that play.
I hate the Sixers so much, but the Bucks are literally, they're beating everybody, and they're beating teams bad. Like I think that they are deep. I think that, and I don't even think they've played that well. So
Yeah, they're second. I was looking this up before. They're second in the league in net rating. We'll touch on the team that's first in net rating, but the Bucks are beating teams on average by about 11 points a game, which is a ton, and they have the best defensive rating since the 2014-2015 Warriors teams. They are the best defensive team in the league by far. And that's all because of Giannis being the best defensive player in the league, and also Brook Lopez, who's really returned to form. Looks like the guy he was pre-back surgery. And I got to say, whoever his back surgeon was should be heralded as an all-time guy, because Brook looks completely fine.
and they have a ton of guys who could switch. I mean, they're a tough cover. They switch everything. They're basically the anti-Sixers. I don't know. I think the Bucks are really good. I think that I kind of feel like an idiot for thinking the Sixers going into the year would be better than them. But yeah, I agree, Andrew. I think that value, what did you say? Were they plus 550
The
still? I
plus
mean,
550, and they're obviously just like beating down teams, and their record this year has shown that they inspire confidence. But when you think about April, May, June, your potential hesitations are: does the team have someone who can take over? We don't need to get into it. Obviously, Giannis is the answer to that. But also, how is Coach Bud going to do? And I think that Coach Bud's actually the last 2 years has done a good job divorcing himself from Hawks Coach Bud, where he is making adjustments on the fly, not necessarily the best at it, but they won a title. They've proven that he can win a title. And I think that with Brook Lopez in there and seemingly healthy, they're trying out a lot of different things, and that's kind of what you want early in the year. And if you look back to last year, they took Boston to 7 games without Chris Middleton. You can't project in the future that they'll have full strength this year, but when you're looking at that, you have to think advantage Bucks in the playoffs, not overlooking this Boston team, potentially having home court over this Boston team where they didn't last year because they were dodging the Nets, which is comical in retrospect. But I think that there's a lot of tea leaves that paint Milwaukee as a clear top choice. And I do think that even though they are the favorite, they still represent value. And I think that's a great bet to put on the board.
we can get into this later. We don't have to get onto it now, but I think the biggest threat to the Bucks is Cleveland. And the reason I think that,
We can get into it right now.
we can get into it right now. And the reason I think that is Cleveland has everything that I believe takes to win. They have they have an elite rim protector, like a true anchor to your defense.
I got two
They
of them.
have I mean, Garland's been hurt, and is he back yet? But like,
Yeah, he
Mitchell's been awesome.
came back against Celtics, had 12 assists after that weird eye laceration. Looked incredible immediately. So
I watched the highlights of that game, and partly in preparation for this podcast because it seemed like an awesome game. And the Cavs look like the real deal. It's not just like stats. They are the real deal. They are gelling much better than expected early in the season with such a huge piece to incorporate. Like there's some teams like Denver that have a lot of pieces to incorporate, and you kind of forgive the sluggish starts a little bit. But the Cavs have every excuse to be sluggish in the beginning, but they're just not. And it's because I guess Bickerstaff's doing a great job with his team, and the team is just a bunch of alphas on that team, even down to like Levert, who can just like fire off just like get hot from a second. That's the kind of guy that you want on your team as well. And I think that I'll get into Evan Mobley a little bit later on. So I don't want to get into too much Evan Mobley talk right now. But Evan Mobley is the real deal defensive stopper. You can just switch him on to anybody. He's incredible. Jared Allen's incredible. And right now, just to kind of level set here, Cavs are 22-1 to win the title, 9-1 to win the East. And I think that when you look around teams in that neighborhood, it's the Sixers at 20-1, the Mavs at 18-1, Grizzlies at 16-1, and Nuggets at 16-1. I fear placing dollars on the Cavs right now at 22-1. I don't think the value is quite there, and I'd rather wait another month or so, even if they climb up to 12-1 and miss a little bit of value, just to make sure that once they're on teams' radar a little bit, and once this gets into the groove of a long season, they're still putting up these numbers, and I'm willing to forego a little bit of value to do that. 9-1 to win the East, I think, is a little bit better right now, but I don't really see that going any lower than 6-1 ever. So I think they're fine to wait on. But one thing you maybe don't want to wait on if you believe in the Cavs is their over-under win total right now is 49.5, and they already have a lot of wins. And you're telling me, is this a 50-win team? They certainly look like it, and they certainly look like they're playing and trying for the regular season as well. And a lot of these guys have shown that they can get injured in the past. Like pretty much every single one of these guys, other than like Donovan Mitchell, have had big injuries, so they could have some injury troubles. But if I'm placing a bet on the Cavs right now, it's at over 49.5.
I want to circle. So I agree with that. I'm actually shocked it's still 49.5. I think if the Cavs have one weak spot, it's potentially that, that big wing, because they're kind of like mixing some people in. There's been a lot of Karras. There's been a lot of Dean Wade.
Dean Wade's good. Dean Wade's pretty good, man.
Definitely not bad. I think he's shooting like 52% from three, which obviously is not sustainable. So that's kind of my one concern. I don't think the 3-point shooting from the Cavs is really going to be there the full year. They're shooting like 43% as a team. But my favorite stat so far this NBA season by far is Karis LeVert is shooting 46% from three and 28% from two. He is just chucking shots and hitting them at almost twice the clip if he's beyond the arc. That guy is a chuck god, and I don't think he should be he's not like a starting player in the NBA. He should be like a microwave off the bench guy. So I would like to see like one more steady big wing for that.
And that's a move that any team can make. Those moves are there to be made by the deadline, and they can get it together such that when you're placing these bets and thinking about April, May, you can kind of bank in that they're going to get somebody either who's been waived or make that kind of move, because that's a gettable archetype of player.
Yeah, and I need one thing I would like to see from the Cavs is just a bigger wing defender, because obviously Garland is not the best defender. Mitchell historically has not been very good. That's been documented many times about how frustrated Gobert was with him. However, he's been awesome this year, and he looks like the defensive player we thought he was going to be coming out of Louisville. We'll see if that's sustainable. I would love for it to be, because he's been amazing. But it's an undersized first two guards. And I would like a bigger defender just to match up a little better with, those Jaylen Browns, those Jason Tatums.
I think you make a good point, but I'm one to believe that you can kind of let perimeter defense slide a bit. Obviously, I think they should make a move. I think they would benefit from a big wing defender. Maybe I could interest them in Tobias. But if you have a guy who could really anchor your defense, I'm like, ever since the Sixers-Hawks series that like broke my brain, I like no longer believe perimeter defense is as valuable as I used to think it was. I think like Mobley reminds me of a young Embiid. Like when Embiid, before in his first couple of years in the league, I mean, he would fly around, he would switch on everything. He was such an active body. I think that you see a lot of that in Mobley, and his ability to anchor a defense, I think, can make up for what they're lacking. And on the perimeter, especially when it comes to missing like a big wing to defend.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting because they like it's you don't get a lot of teams that are so undersized at the point of attack and so long and big in their front court. So it's a weird dynamic where, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it. But Mobley's like roaming, rangy defense is absolutely affecting everyone. All I was saying though is I just want someone on the ball,
Yeah.
just to slow someone down specifically, more so than just slowing teams down with help defense, which is still obviously very important. So,
Can
what
we
else you
get
got
into
for us,
the
Andrew?
to the West quickly?
Yeah,
All right. So in the West, the I tend to think the big boys are in the East. So when it comes to West betting, I like to think about conference title instead of NBA title. Seems like the Warriors are a bit overpriced as the co-favorites with the Clippers at plus 350, but I'm looking at the Suns at plus 475. And I'm someone who didn't believe in the Suns either, and I got burned by them last year in the playoffs. And I think that line where they're the third favorite, despite a good start and like them gelling as a team when you thought they could have fallen apart a little bit, presents a lot of value. It seems like people are baking in the collapses of last year and not really giving them the respect that they potentially deserve as someone who won 2 finals games. And the key thing to think about here is you're basically getting them being the third most likely team to come out of the West, despite being a very good team and possibly the front runner for that top seed at a third value. Plus, the Nets are in complete free fall right now. What move might the Nets have to salvage 5-year horizon?
got to bring in
Phoenix,
KD.
Phoenix Suns might come knocking again for Kevin Durant. And the Grizzlies are also someone who's 8-1 right now and could be a Durant play. I don't love them without the Durant angle,
Yeah, I agree.
but there's a little bit of Kevin Durant chance with the Suns that you can bake into that as value as well that can't be discounted.
I do wish there was and I don't know if any sports book is doing it, but like games for Durant in Brooklyn after the All-Star break. Because I've been in the camp that it's under 0.5 games in Brooklyn after the All-Star break. I've been saying that all year. I
Under
don't
point
think
five.
I think it's under 0.5 games after the All-Star break for Durant in Brooklyn. This is just a gut check. This is a vibe check, but I don't think he's there after the
I
All-Star
think I'm
break.
coming around to that as well, Joe.
Yeah.
I think this team is
You know I've been preaching that.
blow it up mode, and they've lost a lot of leverage from the summer, and they're probably willing to accept mediocre packages. And I think that it could be a December, January thing where we see this happen.
Well, can I interest you in a package of Rui Hachimura,
Yes, I think that's
Avdia?
actually I think that package is actually relatively competitive. If you just throw in like Denny and a bunch of dudes.
Bring them home. KD to DC Part 2. Let's go.
I feel like Durant never wants to play in DC. Like I think
Absolutely not. He's been vocal about how he doesn't want to play in DC. But of
okay.
course,
Things might change after this Brooklyn experience.
yeah, maybe. Back in 2016, though, all us Wizards fans were like, he's coming. We're gonna get Kevin Durant. And then of course he signs with the Warriors and the rest is history. But and you know who we picked up instead of Kevin Durant? Ernie Grunfeld, the greatest GM of all time, decided to give Jan Mahinmi like $18 million a year.
I forgot about the Jan
So
Mahimi
Wizards
contract.
legend.
Yeah, that guy was epic.
Mm.
He was terrible. All right. Well, are there Andrew? You want to cover what else you want to cover?
I think we should turn to awards, which might be arguably more fun for people because it's
Mm.
about the stars who are shining brightest right now. And when you look to awards, you got to start with MVP. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a clear 4-horse race right now, where there's some like falling stars, I'll call them, in Curry, Embiid, Durant, who are like LeBron, who are like your usual suspects up there, and
Mm-hmm.
also honestly Jokic, like really are your usual suspects up there, but don't really have a great path unless they just catch absolute flames. So there's a 4-person race here in terms of the people who I think can plausibly win the award. Giannis, Luca, Tatum, and Ja. That's your 4. It's probably an 80-85% chance your MVP is coming from one of those 4. So when it comes to my strategy here, I had a preseason kind of like narrative or thesis that I wanted to test that I still kind of believe in right now, which is Jokic won the MVP the last 2 years
Uh-huh.
as very, very good statsy player on a 45-ish win team. And I think that we're going to see the voters zag a little bit after that was such a high profile thing to a simple, like early 2010s type of deal, which was the best player on the best team won the MVP award. And it's just like, you kind of just like sign and seal it, like whether that's like Steph Curry in like 2013, those Spurs teams with Tim
2015.
Duncan. Steve Nash had a couple of those where they won 60 games. Steve Nash is MVP. I think it was going to be a little bit of a return to that. And my thesis before the season was that's Jason Tatum. And this team's going to win. This is before Ime Udoka. This team's going to win 60, 65 games. Tatum's the best player. Tatum presents a value. I still think Tatum presents a good value, but right now that's looking like Giannis. Giannis right now is sitting at about a plus 300 clip for MVP. You're
Sure.
losing a little bit of value. He's not incredible value, but I would still not take the bait on Luka, I guess, because Luka is having an unreal season. But I think the voters are going to return to that. Who's the best player on the best team?
Yeah.
The Bucks could have 15 more wins than the Mavs, which is a real tangible number. And Giannis is still putting up those absurd stats. So I still think Giannis has the edge, and I'd be more willing to throw down on Giannis versus Luka at similar odds right now as a result of that thesis.
Yeah, and Yams and I talked about this in our very first podcast, where I was saying that I think Luka's going to lead the league in scoring, and I still feel that way. But I just I don't think the Mavs are going to win enough games. I was on record last year saying I don't think Jokic deserved it because I don't think the Nets won enough games, and that's maybe that's a dumb argument, but that's just my personal opinion. It's historically been an argument for everyone else, for the voters, for the actual award. But then you also look at what Luka's doing, and he's shooting like 66% on twos, which is higher than Giannis. I mean, the stuff he's doing is absurd. I just don't think his team's good enough. When Christian Wood is your second best player, like, you're just not going to win that many games.
Yep,
Yeah.
the roster's horrible, and it's holding back his award candidacy while pumping it up at the same time. So it presents that kind of double-edged sword a little bit. I think Luka could absolutely win this award, and if it's coming down to a two-person race between Giannis and Luka, you should absolutely, like, if you're betting Giannis as a result of this conversation, cover your position, which is something that I like to do. Cover your position and get some Luka exposure. But I still think Giannis presents the better value for the exact reason that you laid out. And I think Ja is kind of lurking in the background where if the Grizz keep pumping out wins and looking like a top seed potential in the West, don't sleep on Ja as well. And if you're looking for like a long odds kind of flyer, a couple guys between 30 and 36 to 1. We'll start with Donovan Mitchell. We don't need to get into it, but Donovan Mitchell could be best player and best team in the East. Simple as that. He's coming in with the narrative of I got here and now we're best player. I'm the best player and the best team. That's something that the voters could like as well. Pascal Siakam 30 to 1. Pascal's having an
That'll
unreal
never
year.
happen.
And Trae Young 36 to 1. Another guy that the Hawks are a good team. I could see Trae just catching absolute flames, but you're giving me thumbs down in the background. But of those three, I think Donovan Mitchell has the clearest case, and he's the best flyer of those three.
Oh, I agree with that completely. Could you imagine a world where Pascal Siakam or Trae Young are MVPs of the league? Like that would
I actually can, particularly Trae Young. I could totally see it.
I see more of a world in which Trae wins than Pascal wins, but Pascal's been so good this year. That Raptors team is nuts. They're scoring an absurd amount on fast breaks. And I was talking to you about this, Yams.
they're the anti-Sixers.
They're the anti-Sixers.
Yeah.
Take all the fast players, put them on the Raptors, and they're gonna have a great season. But just
16 to 1 to win the East, they can get Durant too.
That's really interesting because they have a million pieces that any team would want. I mean,
and let's say Pascal and Barnes are untouchable because the Nets have lost some leverage. There's still enough pieces that you can make it happen.
OG Anunoby's awesome. I mean, they have just an OG package. Like, I would die to have OG Anunoby on the Sixers. Like
OG and picks could get it done.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I just want to touch on
Yeah, go
real
on.
quick. I just want to touch on the Donovan Mitchell long shot choice, because I was kind of going through, we're 10% through, we're 10% into the NBA season. I was trying to do like who would be the first team all NBA right now. So it would obviously be Luca. It would always obviously be Luca. I'd probably put him at forward. It would obviously be Giannis. I'd probably put him at center. Then I'd probably slide in Tatum. And then there's that two guard spots. And you could do, Ja, you could do Devin Booker, maybe Dame. But I think currently, as we stand, and again, small sample size, I think one of them has to be Donovan Mitchell. So if I was betting, and I'm not much of a sports better, but if I was betting, I really like those Donovan Mitchell odds.
Something to consider for the listeners, and I agree that right now I probably would put Donovan Mitchell as a first-team NBA player at the guard position.
Mm-hmm.
One of Donovan Mitchell's teammates is someone that I think presents a lot of award value, and that is Evan Mobley for Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm.
So your top candidates for Defensive Player of the Year will not surprise many people here. The favorite right now is Giannis, and
Mm-hmm.
second is Rudy Gobert. Third is Bam Adebayo, and in fourth, with about a 14-1 odds, is Evan Mobley. So let's start with Giannis at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Giannis probably is the Defensive Player of the Year and the best defender in the league. But I think that if he were to win MVP, voters would want to just be like, I'll give another award to somebody else. Simple as that. Voters are human and not like stats monsters. So if Luka's looking like he's winning the MVP, pivot and throw money on Giannis for Defensive Player of the Year, because they're going to want to give him hardware for such a good season. And like Giannis becomes a lock if Luka's looking like a lock for MVP or somebody else. But let's say Giannis is making a good MVP case. Where does that leave the rest of the field? Rudy Gobert is coming into a Timberwolves team and is not lighting the world on fire or changing that defensive landscape substantially.
They look
And
bad.
he's getting that love as a name instead of a what is he actually doing kind of thing. So you can just throw him out and it presents more value in the market as a result. Bam Adebayo is an incredible defender, but the Heat aren't even 500 right now. And if the
Mm-hmm.
Heat put together a year like last year and Bam stayed on the floor, he probably would have won last year, frankly, over Marcus Smart, and could even
I
win this
agree.
year. But I'm just not seeing it. I haven't watched a lick of the Heat this year, so like maybe he is lighting the world on fire defensively, but
Not
I
particularly.
don't
I wouldn't say so.
I don't see that as value right now. But then you look at what the voters are seeing, and the Cavaliers are tearing it up. Evan Mobley, like you mentioned, like a player confident. I see him as a Garnett type. I
Mm.
think he is a baby Garnett right now, and I think that the voters might be looking to throw some hardware to the Cavs. That's your guy right now, and he's in fourth place, uh, 12 to 14 to 1 odds. I think there's a lot of value in that play, and I think it's something that people consider as a not a super long shot flyer ticket, but a plausible thing that is probably valuable.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I can't see it with Gobert, even though he's. How many times has Gobert won this award? Like
3 times.
3 times. I do think voter fatigue factors into it. I do think the fact that he comes to Minnesota and the influence that they thought he would have really isn't there. I think Minnesota looks really bad. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you think about the most disappointing teams so far in the league, it's been Philadelphia, Miami's been bad, Golden State's been bad, and Minnesota's been bad.
Yep.
Um, you could put Clippers in there. They've played a little better. I mean, they're winning more games than those other teams, but those are I think the biggest like duds to start the season. I can't see it with Gobert. Giannis is tough because if he doesn't win MVP, I think that
You can just pencil him in for Defensive
yeah.
Player of the Year if he stays if he's healthy and doesn't win MVP. So like this is a weird bet where like you're kind of banking on the dependency on Giannis keeping up the MVP chase. But hey, I'm willing to bank on that dependency because I'm banking on Giannis to win the MVP regardless.
I'm kind of in the camp of um if Giannis wins MVP, they're gonna double down and give him Defensive Player of the Year as well, because
They
I
could.
feel like everyone kind of knows that Giannis is the best defensive player in the league.
Has Giannis ever won the award?
Yeah,
He
and
has.
he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year 3 seasons ago now, the season before Jokic's first MVP.
And that's partly why with the either or, because if he hadn't done that already, I could see voters being like, let's super reward Giannis, this player that we love, with this like really cool honor of both. But the fact that he's gotten that hardware before and doubled down makes me think that they won't go with that necessarily again.
I just think that since he hasn't won either award in a few years now, I think the voters are going to look at him and do the, hey, we have he has an opportunity to be this all-time, I mean, he already is all-time guy, but really in hallowed ground of a multi-time MVP and defensive player of the year winner. And if he's, first on both of those, I'm not sure the voter fatigue will play a role in that, but hey, I don't know.
We got 2 more awards,
Awards
right?
that have there's 3 more awards, but there's 2 that have some interesting suspects up there that I'm sure you guys want to talk about. So let's talk about Most Improved Player of the Year, which is a very nebulous award, very weird. I'll talk about what my thesis was before the season, and then we'll talk about where that stands now and what that means.
Sure.
John Morant was a very controversial Most Improved Player of the Year last year. He made the leap, the good to great leap, where he was already very good and people knew that, but he became a top 5 MVP candidate and won the Most Improved Player of the Year. So the voters rewarded him, but it was like met with a little bit of controversy because someone like Jordan Poole went from G League to good, and people thought that was worthy of the improvement. So my thesis was the good to great player is not going to win it this year. And for me, that meant fading guys like who were preseason favorites like Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, and our favorite player, Tyrese Maxey. I wanted the guys who were more like randos. Keldon Johnson was someone that I was eyeing before the season. Right now, someone like Lauri Markkanen fits that bill.
Balling out.
He's killing it. Everyone on
someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fits the bill of the thesis that is good to great. But he is killing it at such a level that I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does represent a possibility for this award, simply because he wasn't on the very good, very prominent level that Ja was before.
I feel like SGA, he's too good. They're not going to let him play. They're gonna shut him down. Like feel like some kind of sore foot.
Well, did you see he in like the last 3 games he scored like
138 a game?
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Shooting. He doesn't hit any threes either. He's just attacking the hoop.
He didn't even take a 3. I don't think the last game he might have gotten 40 points.
Yeah, and he was like 11 for 11 from the line, just crushing teams. He's so good.
So he's someone that is the good to great, but actually has a shot here and would disprove my thesis. And the current frontrunner for the award also disproves my thesis. And Tyrese Maxey is sitting in the pole position for this award simply due to the James Harden injury and the opportunity that it presents. If he has the game that he had last night over and over again, which there was no Embiid last night, but it's certainly possible that you could see Maxey getting 30 points a game while Harden's out. And it's also certainly possible Harden rests more like 2 or 3 months instead of just 1 month.
So I was doing a little bit of lineup research, prepping for this pod, trying to find some silver lining to this Harden injury, maybe something that makes it not look so bad that Harden won't be playing for a month. Unfortunately, I did not find that. The third most used lineup by the Sixers, and again, it's only 28 minutes, so it's not a big sample size at all, but it's an Embiid, Maxey, Melton, Niang, and House lineup, and they're minus 28. They can't guard anybody.
Brutal.
And my thinking is, I don't know, and wins don't typically play a role in Most Improved Player, but I think the divisiveness around this Sixers team and how they are so under expectations right now, I feel like that could really take away from a potential, award season campaign for someone that maybe deserves it.
I agree with you. And I think that you hit the nail on the head that narratives matter for this thing, and the award voters are human. And I don't, as a Sixers fan, I'm not happy about this Harden news. This is not something where I'm like, oh yeah, Maxey gets to shine now. I don't think this helps him in the wins column, and I think those are things to think about. So right now, Maxey's the prohibitive favorite at about a plus 300, but I wouldn't bet that right now. I think guys like Lauri Markkanen are a better value right now at more like a 6-1. I think you have the fun Jazz storyline of they're doing well. Lauri fits the narrative of not great to good. That really shows an improvement. And he's putting up the stats too. He's over 20 points a game, which is probably a good mental threshold for voters to see that they can vote for somebody.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't bet Maxey at what is it, plus 300 now, but I do wish I
Yeah.
would at plus 750. I think that Maxey is gonna keep putting up stats because he has to. This team has nothing. I mean, we'll see. Embiid, hopefully his whatever weird flu he has is over and he's back on Monday. But so I'll be interested to see how they look, kind of similar. I imagine they'll look pretty similar to the Sixers pre-Harden trade, where Maxey and B were kind of running everything, but there's not much to this offense. I mean, without the Harden and Embiid pick and roll. Even last night I was watching the game, and it's really just give Maxey the ball and see what he could do. It's going to be him and Embiid taking turns. So, and the Sixers don't have a coach who's creative enough to scheme something beyond that. So
Let Doc cook.
Yeah, let him cook, man. No, most of the Sixers offense is going to be incredibly dependent on Maxey. I think he's going to put up a ton of stats, and I know that there's not like any betting for this, but I think this kind of really hopefully solidifies my hope that this is Tyrese Maxey's first year being an All-Star, because I think he's by the All-Star.
It seems very, very likely that he's an All-Star, with the reason that he wouldn't be being, if the Sixers are very bad, the voters or the coaches wouldn't want like Embiid, who got voted in, and another Sixers All-Star.
Yeah,
Sure.
That could be like a backlash kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah. But he's gonna go full scorched earth. We got 5 minutes, Andrew. You want to get this one more? You want to get a 6-man?
Yeah, I'll talk 6-man quickly. And there's this one guy who's just like a blaring like siren.
I already know what you're talking about.
Russell Westbrook moving to the bench.
No,
I got him in at 6-man at 12-1 odds, and I'm feeling really good about that bet. He's since moved to about 300 or 400. He's putting up classic Russ numbers, but now with the optics of being on the bench. And let's say the Lakers win like 37 games, which is a lot for them right now, and we're not sure they're going to actually win 37 games. They'll have turned around their season, in quotes, being like a marginally okay team due to Russ's sacrifice of going to the bench. And there's this like narrative around it as well. Plus, he's going to put up the stats. Jordan Poole is the slight favorite over him right now, but I am not a Jordan Poole guy. I am also not really loving this Warriors team. And if they're winning like 45 or less games, I don't see them rewarding Poole with the hardware. If Steph goes down, which he's prone to going down, Poole becomes literally not a 6th man. And that leaves Russ, Christian Wood, who I think is a very good candidate for this award. But I'd rather wait to see what happens with Christian Wood. And then you've got a couple medium to long shots in like the 20-something range, which is Malcolm Brogdon, who's not putting up the stats right now, but I think presents a real opportunity to make a climb as the season goes on. So I just want to tell everyone, keep an eye on Malcolm Brogdon.
He's been great.
And also, I'm going to kind of blend this into the last category I'm talking about. Just a complete random guy who's putting himself in contention for this award is Benedict Mathurin, who was literally my favorite player coming out of this draft. I watched a lot of Arizona basketball because I had a newborn, and I was up during the middle of the night, and Pac-12 basketball was just like what I would watch. So this dude is an absolute animal. And he's got that winning edge that like I love him as a player. And he's coming off the bench, and he's like about 20-1 for 6th man of the year and about 5-1 for rookie of the year right now. Paolo seems to have a chokehold on rookie of the year because he's playing so well. And I'm not recommending placing a minus 200 bet on anybody right now so early in the season. But Paolo does look like he's going to win. But just like, let's say you get a Woj bomb that Paolo's missing a month. Let's say Paolo starts to trail off a little bit. Ben Math is the kind of guy who could just steal one of these awards and is certainly living up to that draft capital early. And I just love the way he plays. And I think that voters will love the way that he plays. He's just a fun guy to watch on League Pass when you're just like a press member grinding out NBA games. He's just like a fun part of your job. And I think that he could get some votes for these things.
I think that Russell Westbrook winning 6th man of the year would just break the league. Like, I think it would be, I hope it happens, man, because I think it would just be insanely funny.
It's a very public team and a very public benching and 6th manning that I could see this happening.
He balled out last night, and then they got waxed by the Jazz. So we'll see. Like, it's another one of those words that we'll see what the team narrative is. I still have no faith in them. I just don't think they have enough shooting.
No, they stink.
I
But
will
I'm gonna
say though,
yeah,
LeBron has a lower true shooting percentage than Russell Westbrook this year. So
interesting.
something
I would not
to
have
think
guessed that.
about.
I would not have guessed that. I will quickly, in like the last minute I've got before you guys will turn the conversation to non-gambling things, just touch on one kind of like longer shot rookie of the year and just kind of I just want to kind of talk about this player for a second, and that's Keegan Murray. So Keegan Murray is at 12-1 right now for rookie of the year. He's not like a flyer long shot ticket, but he's playing really nice basketball right now. I don't really think he's going to put up the stats to really win this award, but it's the kind of thing that maybe the Kings get out of contention and sell some parts and he puts up empty stats because he seems like an empty stats guy, but he just feels like someone who keep an eye on him for this award. Don't bet it right now, but keep an eye on him just as an NBA person because he's a nice player. Like nice is the adjective that I would use to describe him. He is smooth and elegant as an offensive player. He's got moves for days, and he's just coming in with a very mature game and a shooting stroke that is translating to the league in a way that a lot of these kind of Big Ten nice players don't usually translate. And it's just like nice to see this player doing well and keep an eye on him.
Hmm.
yeah, he is playing well. I really thought that this would be the year for Sack, but I was pretty wrong about that. He's playing well. I think that they might have I don't know. I'm not inclined to think that they'll have a flash sale because they traded Halliburton to get Sabonis, so that they're gonna try they're gonna try so hard to make the play in. But
Mhm.
no, he's a fun player. It's good to get some Kings talk on here.
And with that, I'm going to have to duck out, but thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to listening to the remainder of this podcast.
Andrew, thank you, man. We really appreciate your time. This was great insight. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thank you so much, Andrew. We really
See you
appreciate
guys. Thank you for having me.
All
it.
right.
Take care.
See you, Andrew.
Bye.
All right, Kev, how you feeling? You feeling like a gambling shark now? You ready to throw in some bets?
Hey, FanDuel is coming to Maryland. I think pretty soon, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to resist that because I don't need any more reason to root and or be depressed about sports in my life.
I will say that because of my conversations with Andrew, I took one of his bets, one of his recommendations. Do you want to guess which one I took?
Donovan Mitchell at plus 30 or whatever it was, or 30-1 odds or whatever it was.
I actually like those odds, but I didn't take that. I'm surprised. I thought you would have assumed I would have taken Maxey, but Maxey, by the time I thought about betting on him for most improved, was already at plus 300 as opposed to plus 750. So I
Right.
didn't do that. I did Mobley, defensive player of the year. I believe in it.
And what odds did you get for that?
Yeah, plus 1200 I got for that. So I think it's great value. I think that it's him. I think it's him or Giannis, and I think for a two-guy game, I think those are good odds. But I'm not an expert here. I'm just following the advice of our expert guest. So all right. Well, I want to talk about a couple things for the mailbag. One, I think it's worth mentioning the James Harden injury because it's a huge deal. Like in a month, they say a month, but with a foot injury, with an old guy, you never know. Like, I'll give you some of my thoughts. And I'm at the point where I think it's only what 10 games into the season, but
Yeah.
I'm at the point where it's not just like early overreactions. Like I think there is just genuine concern for the Sixers. I think this injury in the next month, we're gonna know if the Sixers season is by December, by Christmas. I think we'll know if the Sixers season is a wash because with this injury, I don't know if Embiid. I mean, he hasn't played in a week. I don't know if he has it in him to keep carrying this team. I would like to believe that he does, but with the way the team is coached, with the way the roster's structured, with Embiid not anchoring a defense, with PJ Tucker, who looks 50, with Daniel House, who's terrible, with Tobias, who is just invisible. Like, this team really has Maxey and nothing else. And I'm worried about Embiid just missing a ton of games in this month. Like, as a Sixers fan, I genuinely am like accepting, like, man, like, it's not happening. Like, this team's doomed. And I think this injury is, I think, one, it's either in a month we're gonna know like this team is done, or Embiid's gonna come back and he's gonna look awesome, and we're gonna like feel good about where they're at when he's healthy. But I don't think they're gonna just tread water. I think they're gonna either really hit their stride or fall apart. And I could, and the worst part is I really could see them folding, because I don't believe in the group. Maxey and Melton are the only two guys who have like showed me that like these guys can play, and there's no scheme. It's just like it's kind of crisis mode in Philadelphia. I'll call it now.
Yeah, last episode, I was saying I'm holding on to my pick, and I still am, but I definitely think it's time to be pretty concerned about this Sixers team. I know that there's been a lot of talk about how, at least that I've seen, Doc kind of ran Harden into the ground. He's just coming off an injury, played a ton of minutes.
He
I was
was
just
second in
wondering
the league in minutes, I believe, and before the injury.
Was he? Well, okay. So my thing is, I was looking at it, and it's pretty consistent for his career now. Obviously, like I think he's doing 37 minutes a game. Obviously, coming off that injury, and him being on the older side now, it's not smart. But I just wanted to, how much blame for the Harden injury do you place on Doc?
I don't really. I don't want to sound. I don't want to go back to my Doc centrism, but like, I don't know. I think what bothers me is like Embiid he load managed a game, and then he's missed the following week with the non-COVID illness. Like, he's been clearly resting plenty. Harden, say what you will about him, it was played every game and is playing a ton of minutes. So it's just like, it's frustrating that I think that Harden felt going into the year he had a lot to prove, and I admired that. And I think what's been so frustrating with me about Embiid is it looks like he doesn't. So I can't blame Doc. I think the players have a lot to say whether or not they rest. I would imagine like player power overrules. If a player really wants to play in a game, I think they're gonna be like, I'm playing. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to look. Doc is not the guy, but I think it's tough to blame him. And I could see this team in the next month really falling apart. I don't think it looks good. Their only hope, as good as Maxey is, their only hope is if Embiid comes back and looks like MVP candidate Embiid, and he hasn't shown he's willing to do that yet. So I'm not believing at the moment, and I hope I'm wrong, but it doesn't look good. But
yeah, I think I largely agree with you in terms of in the Doc take. I think, he probably shouldn't have played him as much. I struggle to really put a ton of blame on him. So
let's focus on what really matters, is Doc's war on B-ball Paul. I don't want to focus on Doc playing his best player too many minutes. So, but I don't want to do the B-ball Paul thing. I don't want to do the Sixers thing anymore.
Onto the mailbag.
So remember that if you would like to submit a question to the pod, just send an email to thedriveandkick@gmail.com. That's all one word. Obviously, it's an email. thedriveandkick@gmail.com. So send an email to the pod. We'll get your question out. Let's start with Craig. Craig says, "Hello all. Great podcast this week as always. After listening to the Russ segment this last week, knowing Joe's hatred of Simmons and Kevin having survived Russ on the Wizards, if you had to pick one right now for your team, which would you pick? And no, neither is not an answer. Keep up the great work. Enjoy your day, guys." This is a good question.
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it, man.
I'm pretty well documented saying that I wanted to trade Beal for the Simmons package. And I think when Craig submitted this question earlier this week, I was like, obviously, I want to take Simmons. Give me Simmons. However, the new development with Russ on the bench and how bad Simmons has been this year, I'm kind of leaning, shockingly, towards having Westbrook on my team right now. Because at the very least, he's entertaining for good or for bad, and he's an expiring.
Yeah. No,
So,
if you asked me this question, like last year, I would probably say let me backtrack a little bit. I've always said that I preferred, even when Simmons was at his better, when he was not necessarily at his best, but better, I've always said that I would take Simmons over Westbrook. I always thought Simmons is a smarter player. I thought his ability to defend made him the obvious answer, because Russ is just like, yeah, Russ shoots threes, but you don't want that. And now I'm like, man, this is a really tough question for the Sixers, because the Sixers don't have any defender who can switch or anybody who could push pace. Man, I hate this question because Simmons has looked so bad. He's looked so bad. And I hate myself for saying it, but I still think, because the answer is for your team. So for the Sixers, I think having Simmons, who could defend, who could switch, who could push the pace, who could run in transition, who could defend in transition, in theory, I would rather that than Russ coming off the bench and basically taking shots away from Maxey. I think for the Sixers, it has to be Simmons, but most teams, it would be Westbrook.
This next question comes from Grady out in Pennsylvania. He says, fellas, many are saying the Drive and Kick has the most handsome hosts in all of Philadelphia and Washington-centric professional basketball podcasts. Thank you, Grady. So I just wanted to say congratulations for that. My question is for Kevin. Kevin, do you think that Ted Leonsis trying to buy the Nationals will help or hurt the Wizards in the long run? On one hand, he is skirted by as a pretty bad owner overall by having multiple generational players on the Capitals. On the other hand, less involvement with the Wizards could lead to Zach Leonsis taking a bigger role, which could arguably be worse. Either way, the prospects scare me. Would love to know your thoughts. Grady. Thanks for that question, Grady. So for people that don't pay attention to Wizards basketball, which is about 95% of the population, the NBA watching population, people don't realize how bad of an owner Ted Leonsis is. He does not care about winning basketball in the long run. He is the definition of someone that, sells all of his pieces to get a couple more butts and seats to sell some tickets. There's the classic story or article he put out years ago about how the Wizards have their big three with John Wall, Andre Bloch, and I can't even remember who the third one is.
It wasn't even Beal?
It wasn't. This is way before. This is John Wall's like rookie season. So it's him, Andre Bloch, and whoever the third guy is. Which the fact that I can't even remember it should tell you that hey, it didn't work. And he constantly does these things that sacrifice long-term success for maybe just a smidge of short-term success. And the fact that he's potentially buying the Nationals, I think is terrible, because I think it means he's gonna care even less about making sure the Wizards win, and even more about, hey, I need my money from the Wizards every year because I just spent all this money on another expensive sports team. Like, you better keep bringing in the checks. Side note, I went to the Wizards Bulls game, and I saw Ted Leonsis. He was sitting courtside on his phone the entire time. This dude doesn't care. Underratedly bad owner. Yeah, the more he owns, the worse I think DC sports are going to be.
I think that Grady, great question, man. I have no insight on this, but what I will say is, from the Sixers, like a sports ownership perspective, when owners own a bunch of teams, they become essentially just like moguls who, like Harris Blitzer owns the Sixers, they own the Devils. They're always like, I think they were trying to buy the Mets. Still, anytime there's a new team, they're like, ooh, I'm gonna buy that. They are super money focused. The nice thing with that is they usually are inclined to spend some money to win, but you'll also see your fair share of second round picks getting sold for cash, basically. So it is usually tough when these guys own a bunch of teams because they're businessmen, man. I mean, it's like, all right, you want to let's go to Alec, and I think he's in Oregon, somewhere in the West Coast. Hey homies, big fan of the podcast, and I was wondering if I could ask you experts two questions. The first is, what Mario Party characters represent Eastern Conference teams the most? Who is the Luigi to your Mario? The second question is, do you think you need a Celtics guest on the pod? I know a guy who knows a guy who knows me. I'm gonna give, let's quick look. I'm gonna give Mario, who's great. Let's give him to the Bucks. They're always great.
That's fair.
Let's give Luigi to the Celtics. Luigi is like usually good number 2, always good, maybe not quite good enough.
He's green.
He's green. Let's give, who's the worst? Let's give Wario. Man, let's give Wario to the Sixers just for being the worst. I don't think I could do the whole conference. That's about all I got.
I think I'm impressed that you were able to get that far. I mean, we know you and Alec had many competitions back at Franklin and Marshall for Mario Party, so you're both the experts in that category.
That's all I got, man. Yeah.
And in terms of the second question, our people will talk to your people, Alec.
Yeah, I'd love to have a Celtics guest on the pod. I think that it's good we get different voices in the room.
So. And thank you for that question. That was a unique one.
Yeah, thank you, Alec.
Final thoughts?
Well, the Sixers play the Suns on Monday. I am dreading that. Then we got the Hawks a couple times. So as usual, my mood will be determined by millionaire men playing a game that I have that I have no control over. So I'm stoked about that.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say on the pod that the Wizards were down 56-58 at halftime last night and ended up losing by 42 points in what was the worst home defeat in franchise history.
Self-loathing season already.
Hey, it's been self-loathing season for a couple years now. But with that, that brings us to another close of the Drive and Kick podcast.
Really quick, thank you, Andrew.
Yes, and a shout out to Andrew. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciated your insight, and hopefully a few of our listeners out there will make some money on some of his recommendations. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
One sec. I gotta plug something. All right, gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right.
With that, we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.